You know where you are with most video game bad guys. They're evil, and either want to take over the world, destroy it, or murder everyone in it, starting with you. Such is the lot in life for most of gaming's greatest villains. But sometimes it's not as clear-cut as that, and you can feel like the real villain for stopping them. And in some cases, you very probably are. Here are 7 video game bad guys who aren't really bad at all. Pagon. Yes, he forcefully took over the remote area of f.e.a.r, but he was born into drugs and a bad family, something that is far beyond his control, not to mention his father, who never supported his flamboyant ways. He grew up knowing nothing except for living a life of crime, but he's ambitious, so steps in to take over an already crumbling state. He's not exactly kind, but he's also not as evil as everyone thinks he is. In fact, it's your fault for kicking off a civil war in the first place. And near the start of the game, he invites you for dinner, but has to briefly step out for a bit to sort some things out. Most people wander off and instigate chaos, but if you wait just like he asked, he returns to help you spread your mother's ashes. Which doesn't sound too bad to us. Revolver Ocelot. Perceived evil because he's violent, has murdered more than a few people, expresses a fondness for torture, and stole multiple nuclear weapons with the intent to fire them. But, and plug your ears anyone who hasn't played Metal Gear Solid 4, turns out that Ocelot was basically the greatest method actor of all time, as his true intention all along was to bring about the end of a shadow organisation akin to the Illuminati. When Grey Fox cut off his hand during the Shadow Moses incident, Ocelot replaced it with liquid snakes and let himself be brainwashed into thinking he was possessed by the severed limb, all to get closer to his eventual goal, freedom from the Patriots. He wasn't completely altruistic, as without the intervention of Snake and friends, Ocelot's plan would have plunged the world into total anarchy, but his intentions were, ultimately, of a noble persuasion. Alma. Alma's a scary ghost girl who tends to leave bucket loads of wall-to-wall splatter wherever she goes, and she has a habit of instantly killing on contact in the game's various hallucinatory sequences depicting her as a young woman. However, she's nothing but a victim. Traumatized by uncontrollable psychic powers at a very young age, she was brutally experimented on during childhood, so it's entirely understandable that she'd lash out after death, which probably makes her not that evil at all. She didn't want to be this way, so we can hardly call her a bad guy. King Dedede. This guy stole the Star Rod from the Fountain of Dreams and broke it up, giving him full control over the fountain and leaving the people of Dreamland unable to dream. But he actually only committed the crime because he knew that a nightmare had infested the fountain and wanted to stop it from infiltrating the dreams of the country's citizens through the power of the rod. By reuniting all the rod's pieces, Kirby messes things right up, and ultimately it was Dedede who sent him off to the final confrontation to fix the problem. William Johnson. Johnson smuggled a load of tea into the US and further profiteered by having his men falsely pose as tax collectors. Plus, he was a Templar, and in Assassin's Creed, that's enough to make anyone bad, right? In fact, he was stockpiling money in an attempt to buy Iroquois Island on behalf of the Templars. And the reason he was doing that was because he predicted that said island's indigenous people, along with all of the natives of America, were soon to suffer the full brunt of the new colonists' intolerance. The bid to buy the island was a preemptive strike in protecting the Native Americans from oppression by the country's new settlers, and while he may have become aggressive when the Iroquois didn't want to negotiate, Johnson's plan only ever sprang from a benevolent perspective. Also, in hindsight, he was totally right. Smallpox blankets, anyone? Ryder White. Ryder is perceived as evil because he seems to make life hard for the survivors at every turn. He screws them over, steals their antidote, and eventually turns into a big monster and has to be killed. But take a look at Ryder White's campaign DLC, and it reveals that he's being manipulated and screwed around a lot himself. In fact, a lot of his contact with the player in the main game actually comes from another character, Kevin Sharon Bannister, posing as him. And besides all of that, everything he does is essentially to the end of securing a cure for his infected wife. The bad news is, she dies and then turns into a big monster and has to be killed. Scorpion. This glowy-eyed demonic zombie ninja harpoons people for fun and then sets fire to them when he gets bored. Evil, you'd think. But in the original Mortal Kombat storyline, Scorpion was an avenging victim character. Murdered, along with his family and clan, by Sub-Zero, he returned to seek vengeance against his killer, wearing a yellow version of Subby's outfit in order to mock him. Within the two ninjas storyline, Sub-Zero was the bad guy, Scorpion the hero. But for some reason that's been forgotten over recent years, with their roles being reversed. probably because the Mortal Kombat storyline is mental. So that's our list of bad guys who aren't really bad. Can you think of any others whose motivation is entirely justified, or any other cases in which your hero character turns out to be an unthinking monster when you really give it a bit of thought? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more news, reviews, previews and features here on GamesRadar+.